Big games coming up here in this week 7 of the college football slate. We've got 3 best bets for you, and we've got 3 big game breakdowns, and they certainly are because it's put up or shut up time with a lot of these top 25, top 30 teams across the country. And we've got 3 of the best here at wagertalk.com that are going to help us navigate through what is going to be a very competitive week 7 here in the college football slate. Brian Leonard in the house, Adam Trigger here, as well as Mr. Rob Vino ready to go. And we're going to kick it off in the SEC with you there, Brian Leonard, as LSU. Amazing win there. Great comeback. Gets it done against Mizzou. Nice back and forth. But now they're at home welcoming in Auburn. So what are we doing in this big SEC matchup?
Yeah, you mentioned Auburn. They had last week off after taking number 1 Georgia to the buzzer in a 27-20 loss. And I don't know about you guys, but I was watching the scores for that one, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, wouldn't that be nice if they could knock off Georgia, a team who hadn't played well. And unfortunately, I went against Georgia the next week and got smoked. But I like this situation. There's 2 losses in a row now for Auburn after starting the year 3-0. And, you know, Coach Hugh Freeze is at his best as an underdog role, posting a 28-13 ATS mark. And the underdog in this series has also cashed 7 straight, while Auburn has won 4 straight ATS. So Auburn's played pretty well. The underdog has done well in this series, and the coach has a nice record in the past catching points. Auburn struggled against the run last year, allowing 4.6 yards per carry, and we're seeing much of the same, unfortunately, this year. This is a team that hasn't been able to stop the run very well. They've done a nice job of the pass defense, but Auburn hasn't had much offensive success through the air. In fact, the running game has been productive, but until they complement that with through the air a little bit, this offense will be a little suspect. You go back and take a look at the scores offensively, what they've done so far this year. They were able to score 59 and 45 against weak competition, but against Power 5 teams, they managed 14, 10, and 20 points. LSU has a solid home field advantage, especially in night games. I've always said that they should schedule all their games. The hell with getting the money from the league. Just play all your games at night at home. LSU would be a much better team doing that, as that's an intimidating area to be in. They're 6-1 ATS in Brian Kelly's inaugural season at home. LSU enters play at 4-2 on the year, with losses to number 4 Florida State, number 13 Mississippi. The Mississippi game could have gone either way. That was a hell of a football game. Unlike their opponent, LSU has been terrific through the air offensively, posting a quarterback rating of 185.8 with a 19-2 touchdown to interception ratio. This is a very dynamic offense. We should have no trouble moving the football in this game. Unfortunately, they're allowing over 5 yards per carry on the ground, and that's where Auburn could take advantage of them. I look for this to be a higher scoring game. History has had lower scoring games other than a few years ago. I believe they got to 59, but the way this Auburn plays defense, I think that LSU can move the ball at will here, and I think Auburn can move the ball on the ground, have a lot of success that way. That's the way to keep this LSU offense off the field, just run the football, and I think they'll have success in that regard. So I'm going to take a look at the over in this matchup.
All right, expecting some points there in that SEC matchup, where we'll head here in just a second to the ACC. But do want to remind you guys, if college football content is what you're looking for, top 25 previews, best bets, we've got you covered here at Wager Talk TV. Just go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, like the content here, and of course, we've got a lot more still to cover here in this week 7 of the college football season, including, oh boy, Mario Cristobal. Adam Trigger in the house. All right, Trig, what do we do here? The U traveling to North Carolina, trying to forget about Georgia Tech as best and as fast as they can. What do we do here? They're in an underdog role going up against North Carolina. Who do you like in this one?
So, listen, Miami, they made an inexcusable mistake last week. They lost a football game because of it. It's pretty much well known by people that probably don't even watch college football, probably have heard about this at this point. And I've heard this game being talked about all week. And I guess I disagree with this whole narrative that, like, how could Miami possibly recover from that? Like, this isn't the first time we've seen a team do something stupid to cost them a game. It won't be the last. And I think this number, which has come down a little bit since the open of 4, which I agree with the move, has that baked in a little bit. Like this to me feels like a far more even game. And I just think that there's this sort of group think, if you will, that has everyone just writing off Miami. And that's kind of I just don't agree with that. Like it's their first loss of the season. I'm sure that everyone in that locker room, the coaching staff, the players wishes they could have those last few minutes back. But I don't see any reason why they can't bounce back here. And I do see paths to victory for them against this North Carolina team. So let's go back to last week. North Carolina, they lit up Syracuse, 442 passing yards for Drake May, over 600 yards of total offense in that game, which to me is a tad deceiving. Syracuse was very banged up, but like by game time, it was pretty clear that Syracuse, if you saw the way the line was moving, and then obviously that the product Syracuse put on the field last week, that was a team that was very banged up, specifically defensively. They had no chance against that North Carolina offense. Miami's defense is outstanding. And if you go back to last week's game, I mean, it's actually amazing that Georgia Tech even had the chance to win that game. They had 250 yards of total offense, and 74 of them were after the gift turnover, which means they didn't even put up, like if Miami kneels that ball out, Joe, they don't even have 200 yards of offense in that game. 5 turnovers last week, inexcusable for Miami. But I don't know that happens again. Like the North Carolina defense has been a lot better, in my opinion. Like they're not just a total sieve like they were last year, but this still isn't a very good defense. Like I don't know that I see North Carolina coming out and forcing all those turnovers to even this game up in that regard. So I think this number is high. I think the number is sort of artificially higher than it should be because of what happened last week. I think you'll get a focused effort from Miami, if anything. I mean, they just took their first loss of the season, so certainly won't be taking anything for granted. And listen, North Carolina, they're not very good against the run. Miami should be able to run the ball, which is going to allow them to control possession a little bit, which is going to allow them to chew up clock. And if you can do that against North Carolina, you certainly can stay in the game. I just didn't agree with the number at 4. This didn't make my client card because I've never been a big crystal ball guy, haven't been super high on this Miami team, but I certainly don't think that the number should have been 4. I think there's even value down to 3. If you can find a 3.5, that's ideal. This game's probably closer to a pick. So at the very least, you're getting some line value, I think, with Miami. And it feels like a spot where they can come give an effort and at least keep this to a field goal game. I think if you force me to pick a winner here, though, Joe, I would go with the Canes. I think they bounce back and pull the upset.
All right, good stuff there. Trying to wipe that stench off there of getting crystal-balled Miami bettors. Not a bad way to look at it as a dog here on the road. And then, of course, Rob Vino coming in over the top with the absolute best game of the week, the absolute degenerate special here, that late night degenerate special here, Saturday night when all else fails. Vino, that you always got that Hawaii game that we can look at here at the end of the day. So San Diego State and Hawaii, man, what are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we need to have a talk with the guy who puts together the big game breakdown schedule for us to choose from, Joe. But in actuality, this is always a big game, right? I mean, the last game on the card, stay up till 3:30 in the morning on the East Coast to find out if you're ahead or behind for the day. What could be better than that? But I do think that there's a way to play this game with an advantage, and I've talked about it more than once so far this season where these totals are concerned, and it just seems that numbers constantly, you can find a handful of them each and every week that are based on perception rather than reality. And again, we look at this total and find San Diego State, Hawaii sitting at 52.5. It's certainly based on the fact that people still regard San Diego State as a team that's tough at the point of attack, especially defensively across the front seven. Just not true. The last 4 weeks, the last 4 games before their bye, as far as their rush defense is concerned, they played Air Force, Boise, Oregon State, and UCLA. All 4 are run-oriented, run-heavy teams. and all four absolutely bulldozed San Diego State. They combined for 973 rushing yards, 5.9 a carry, 243.3 per game. And those numbers aren't skewed by college football sack yardage. In those 4 games, San Diego State only had 3 sacks and minus 26 yards in sack yardage. So the numbers are definitely not skewed. Now, the good news for San Diego State, of course, is that Hawaii doesn't run. They don't try to run. They can't run when they try to run. They average 60 yards a game running the football. The play calling is unbalanced as could be. They run the ball 38% of the time. They throw it 62% of the time. So Hawaii's not likely to be able to expose San Diego State's rush defense weakness. However, in those games where San Diego State got run on by those 4 teams for 243 yards per, they still gave up a lot of passing yardage in those games to a few of those teams. And in fact, 18.6 per completion on average. So even though they were being run on very easily, they were still giving up yardage through the air, and they weren't sacking anybody. It's just a bad combination. It's not a San Diego State vintage defense, and that's the way we continue to see these totals priced. I think for Hawaii, they'll be able to make some or be productive. Let's put it that way. Be productive yardage-wise, point-wise on the scoreboard, even if they are a one-handed team that can only throw the football, because San Diego State doesn't seem to be able to stop anything at this point in time. The other side of that coin is for SDSU, it's a step down in class, a major step down in class where defense is concerned. Hawaii doesn't stop anybody defensively. They just gave up over 400 yards to UNLV, 560 to Oregon. They played Stanford and gave up 406. So San Diego State, which with Jalen Maiden at quarterback, has actually begun to balance off their play calling a little bit. And they've shown some sparks offensively against lesser foes, which this is. I think 52.5 is way too low here, Joe. This to me seems like a game that could reach that 31-24 level minimum, which would put it at 55 and an easy ticket cash. So we're going to play it that way. Big game breakdown. San Diego State at Hawaii over 52.5.
All right, looking for the points there in the late night special. We've got 3 best bets coming up. But if you happen to have any questions on those 3 games or any of the games coming up here in this week 7 slate in college football, drop them in the comment section, as these guys all weekend long will be keeping an eye there. If you have a particular game you'd like an opinion on or any questions about these games, go ahead and drop them in the comment section. Brian Leonard, Adam Trigger, Rob Vino, these guys will get you the answer as we head back full circle to Brian Leonard, ready to go for his best bet here today. And you're going to spend a little Mountain West time for us here, Brian, in the surprising UNLV team this year. Or maybe you're not surprised here taking on Nevada. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, we'll keep this one in state as we take a look at the big game in Nevada for this weekend. Not much was expected in Vegas this year under new head coach Barry Odom. After all, the Rebels haven't had a winning season since 2013. But this team enters play with a 4-1 mark, and it has to be a little bit of a asterisk there because of that game against Vanderbilt. I don't think they should have won, but they got the win, and that's all that matters there. But they're 4-1 on the season, only loss coming at number 2 Michigan. That's pretty impressive. Although they did get blown out by Michigan, they did, I believe, cover the spread. It ended up close to the number, but both of these teams are coming off a bye in anticipation of their biggest game of the year, the battle for the Fremont Cannon. Vegas has had some consistency out of the quarterback position, but it still can't be considered a strength. A 114.56 quarterback rating while throwing more interceptions and touchdowns, 4-3. The defense has been really good against the run, averaging just 3.38 yards per carry. That doesn't happen very often here for the Rebels. Last year, I believe they were 3.9, and that was actually a pretty good year for them on the defense against the run. Nevada's had a nice run under Jay Norvell after he settled into Reno. 30-18 record his last 4 years here, but things have not been good since Ken Wilson arrived. The Wolfpack are now 2-15 since his hiring, including posting a winless 2023 heading into this must-win game for Nevada. And let's face it, the team up north takes this in-state rivalry much more serious than the team in the gaming capital of the world. But this year, Nevada just doesn't have the horses The passing game has produced just 2 touchdowns through the air, and the running game is averaging just 3.15 yards per carry. That's the good part about Nevada. The defense has been horrible, allowing a whopping 8.34 yards per play. That's roughly a first down every 1.2 plays. This defense has fallen apart for Nevada. This is the first time in recent memory the Rebels have all the personnel advantages in this game. It's tough to lay this price on the road with a team like UNLV. In fact, it opened 10. Now it's down to 8. And I'm jumping in right now because I don't think this team in Reno deserves any of my money. And as much heartache as football fans have had here in Las Vegas, this is one game we go in with all the advantages here. All you got to do is win the game. They've won in the past. They've done very well in this series so far. But I think 8 points is cheap when you take a look at what they've done on the season. They should really be able to move the football just about every time they get it here against this Nevada defense. So we're laying the numbers on the road with UNLV in football, and I think that's the first time in my life I've ever said that.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow. First time for everything there, Brian Leonard. But yes, the Battle of Nevada, it is on this weekend here. And just a quick reminder, if you like the content here, hit that thumbs up for us here. Hit the like button. So much college football content still to come here, not just this week, but for the rest of the season, as Adam Trigger ready for his best bet. And Adam apparently doesn't like defense because you certainly ain't getting any in this game here, Trig. Talk to me about North Texas and Temple. What are you looking at here, man?
You're not wrong there, Joe. I think the total for this one's upwards of 70 at this point. I saw 70.5 at one point. There's probably going to be quite a bit of points, but I guess we'll start the handicap there. This is a 6.5 point spread, and I don't think either of these teams are really capable of pulling away from the other, just because, I don't think either is going to get consistent stops in this game. Now, I think Temple is really good offensively. They've started to show it in recent weeks. Pretty much ever since they stepped back down to playing like competition, teams that are closer to them, the offense has been outstanding. Last week, EJ Warner, 472 passing yards. They lost the game by 15, but still moving the ball up and down the field. And I do think that, they were never going to move it consistently against a team like Miami. They struggled to move it against Rutgers. But since they've started to play, teams in their conference, the offense has looked really good. I think this matchup sets up great for Temple's offense. North Texas has one of the worst pass defenses in the country. So Temple, their issue offensively is the ability, they can't run the ball. They haven't shown much ability to do that. But they might not need to here because North Texas hasn't been able to stop anyone through the air. And some of the teams that have scored on North Texas this year, Louisiana Tech, Florida International, they allowed 30 plus to FCS Abilene Christian. Cal dropped 58 on them. I mean, not exactly like banner offensive teams, just doing whatever they want against North Texas. So I think Temple is going to be able to, generate some offense here as well. Now, Temple might give up some points, but it goes back to, should one of these teams be a touchdown favorite over the other? I think probably not. And that's why I'm, kind of willing to jump in and take the points with Temple here. Though I think Temple is the better of these two teams. Obviously, they've got to head on the road here, but like I was high on Temple coming into this season. I played them a couple times. Joe, I crossed them off. They were like one of the last ones for me to leave off last week, which I'm glad I did because that would have been a tough loss. They were a 14-point underdog, lose the game by 15 despite being, pretty competitive against UTSA. So I don't think North Texas is that caliber of an opponent. I don't think North Texas deserves to be this big a favorite when they can't stop anyone, specifically through the air where Temple, does their best work offensively. So probably have a little bit of a shootout here. But again, going to be really difficult for either of these teams to pull away. So give me the touchdown or the 6.5 is where I locked it in. This is a client play for me. I think Temple hangs around here. And Joe, I'll call for the outright up. So you can sprinkle on the underdog here. I think the Owls leave the Lone Star State with a win here. 4% play. Temple plus 6.5 is my best bet.
All right, Temple plus 6.5 against North Texas in Denton here this weekend. Should be an entertaining one, if nothing else. That is for sure. And now, Rob, Vino, you are ready to roll for us. And last but not least, best bet time here, my friend. Which game are you looking at for a best bet here in this Week 7 college football slate?
Well, first off, to what Adam said, I'm unhappy that I left Temple off my card last week because I had that game circled to go over and kick myself for not playing that one. But certainly EJ Warner and company put up a bunch of points there. I'm going to go to, you know what, Joe? Are they CUSA? Are they Sunbelt? Where do these teams reside anymore? They're in the American Athletic Conference. Big game matchup here between UAB and UTSA. UTSA was the other side of that Temple game last week, and Frank Harris finally came back to play quarterback healthy last week, and so we saw that. Harris and UTSA, he missed 2 games, missed Army and Tennessee, I think. Then they had a bye week, and then he comes back off of the bye, the turf toe all healed up, and he goes 25 of 33, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 10.2 yards per attempt. So every time he dropped back and threw the ball, it was over 10 yards. It was Temple's defense. We understand that, but still it's good to see Frank Harris looking like Frank Harris one more time. He threw 2 TD passes outside the red zone. The offense gained some of that explosiveness back, 49 points, 495 yards. They did all of that in only 24 minutes and 42 seconds of possession time. So they didn't have the ball very much at all, yet they, rolled off 49 points. They played at their fastest tempo of the season last week. They got off a snap every 21.8 seconds. That's kind of the clue that Frank Harris is healthy again, because that offense was extreme tempo last week. But the other side of all that goodness is their defense, which was brutally bad against Temple. Adam laid out some of the stuff Temple did successfully on offense, including EJ Warner. How about he threw the ball 65 times last week and got sacked 1 time? That's a red flag in anybody's world. When you can only sack a quarterback once in 65 attempts, and the offensive line you're trying to sack a quarterback against belongs to Temple, then you got to be ashamed of yourself. So I don't know. This UTSA defense has not lived up to expectations whatsoever this week. And that brings into play the underdog side here, UAB, Trent Dilfer's squad, which if I go back 2 weeks to when they went to Tulane, and absolutely for 2.5 quarters, their offensive line pushed Tulane's front 7 right off the ball. They ran the ball well. They threw the ball well. In fact, Trent Dilfer's team, in all honesty, they had to absolutely lose by 12 on their own, because they made every mistake in the book, right to the point where I think it was a 12 men on the field on defense where Dilfer went ballistic against his defensive coordinator. They had multiple opportunities to not only cover that game, but win that game. Here they're going to get 9.5 against UTSA after only losing by 12 in Tulane. I just don't think that number's right here. UAB, their tempo is 16th fastest in the country, so UTSA is going to get a dose of their own medicine. And as I mentioned, their defense hasn't looked good whatsoever. UAB right now running a play every 22.9 seconds. And again, I think the line of scrimmage play here belongs to Alabama-Birmingham. They've looked better to me at the point of attack than UTSA does. Their quarterback, Jacob Zeno, Baylor transfer a couple of years ago, 75.5% completions on the season. Been really, really good. The offense hums. I think they'll do that against UTSA. The last 2 years have been really close battles between these two. And I think we're going to see another one here. I don't think UAB is at all intimidated. Again, I'm using that Tulane game as a pretty solid foundation for this selection, because Tulane is a far better defensive unit than is Texas San Antonio. So I'll take 9 points here, Joe. I think it's way too many. Give me UAB +9 as the underdog special here. Best bet over Texas San Antonio.
All right, getting it done there. Expecting some points. They have certainly been putting up some offense there, UAB. So should be an exciting one. And there you got it. 6 games, 3 best bets, 3 big game breakdowns, and plenty of opportunities to make it a very profitable weekend. Make sure you visit Brian Leonard, Adam Trigger, and Rob Vino at wagertalk.com. But don't go anywhere. We got so much more game previews coming your way for this week 7. Just go ahead, click on the video on your screen right now, and you'll have access to all the top 25 matchups, plus a lot more best bets.